All right, Algebra 2. So this is going to be Chapter 1, Lesson 6, Absolute Value Equations and Inequalities. And if you had me last year for Algebra, we did not make it to this. So this is a new concept, okay? So real quick, let's refresh about ourselves, like what an absolute value actually is. So an absolute value is the distance on a number is away from zero on a number line. Okay, so it's talking about the distance a number is away from zero, which means absolute value is always a positive number. So anytime that you take the absolute value of a number, it's always positive. And that's because distance is always counted as positive. Okay, an absolute value of a number is always positive, but the number that the absolute value was taken of could have been negative or positive. And that's something to really understand for what we're going to do with these absolute value equations. Is we don't know if the number that they used was positive or if it was negative, because when I take the absolute value of a positive number or a negative number, the answer is always positive. So what we're going to do is we are going to assume that we don't know if that number was positive or negative to begin with, so we're going to have to look at both case scenarios. All right, so here are our 4 steps that we are going to use to solve an absolute value equation. So the first step is going to be to isolate the absolute value. So that means the absolute value and whatever is inside of it needs to be by itself first before you can actually start solving it, okay? So if there's a +2 outside of that absolute value symbol, you need to subtract it over. If there's a 3 times the absolute value sign, you need to divide that over before you start taking stuff out of the absolute value. After you isolate it, you're going to set the contents of the absolute value equal to the number as a positive and a negative. So the contents, that means whatever's inside of the absolute value symbols, like if it's 2x or 3x minus 7, you're going to take that and set that equal to whatever it's equal to, positive and negative. And then you're going to solve each equation. So you're going to have 2 equations that you have to solve. And then you're going to check your answers, okay? Always check them. Sometimes both of them make it true. Sometimes one of them makes it true, okay? Now, here's a clause. If you isolate the absolute value and it equals a negative number, you can stop there because that means that it's no solution. But you cannot make this determination until the absolute value is by itself. Once the absolute value is by itself, if it's still equal to a negative number, no solution, because absolute value would never be equal to a negative number. All right, so this board, Smartboard, does not have absolute value symbols, so I'm going to try to make these a little bit darker before we start the problem. Okay, so it just says solve each absolute value equation. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure the absolute value is isolated. So what that means is this absolute value should have nothing outside of it, okay? Which this one is already isolated. There's nothing going on outside the absolute value. So now I can take what's inside the absolute value, this right here, and I can set it equal to positive 5 and negative 5. So I'm going to say 2x minus 1 equals 5. And 2x minus 1 equals negative 5. So I'm setting it equal to the positive and negative 5. And then I'm going to solve each one. So I'll add 1. Look at me writing with different colors. So 2x equals 6, divide by 2, and x is 3. So there's one of my answers. Over here, I'll add 1. So 2x equals negative 4, divide by 2, and x equals negative 2. And I want you to mentally check these. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 minus 1 is 5. And what's the absolute value of 5? 5, so it's right. Check negative 2. 2 times negative 2, negative 4. Negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. And what's the absolute value of negative 5? Positive 5, so they're both right. All right, you all try this one. So go ahead and pause me and then go for it. All right, so you all should have looked at it and thought, okay, the absolute value is already by itself. There's nothing going on outside that absolute value, so it's isolated. So now I can take whatever inside of that absolute value and set it equal to the positive and negative number. So I can take this 2x plus 5 and I can put it equal to positive 9. And I can put it equal to to negative 9. Okay. All right, so now I solve each one. So subtract 5. So 2x equals 4. Divide by 2. And x equals 2. Subtract 5. So 2x equals negative 14. Divide by 2. And x equals negative 7. Last thing to do is check them. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. And the absolute value of 9 is 9, so it's good. Negative 7. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. Negative 14 plus 5, that's negative 9. And the absolute value of negative 9 is positive 9, so it's good. All right, last one, and then we'll move on to the second slide here. All right, so absolute value symbol, nothing on the outside, okay? So it's good to go. Here's one thing. You should notice the absolute value is equal to what? A negative number. If an absolute value is by itself and it's equal to a negative number, automatically no solution. Okay? But if you just realize that you can't recognize that, go ahead and set it equal to positive and negative. When you go to check your answer, you'll find that neither of them make that equation true, which means it's no solution because both of the answers don't make it true. Okay? But hopefully we can start recognizing that if the absolute value is by itself and it's equal to a negative number, no solution. All right, so this one, we have not done step 2 yet. All the ones in that last slide were already by itself. So step 2 is I'm going to have to make the absolute value equation be by itself. Okay, so I said we didn't do step 2, we didn't do step 1, okay? Isolate the absolute value. So those are the same from the last slide, so you don't need to write them down again. All right. Okay, so this one, looking at it, there are 2 things outside of the absolute value that are going on, okay? There's this 3 and this minus 1, which means my absolute value is not by itself. So I have to think, okay, what would be the steps that I would solve a regular equation if this was just like 3x minus 1? First thing I would do is add the 1, okay? So that would leave me with 3 times the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 9. The absolute value is still not by itself because that 3's out there. So now I'll divide by 3. So that'll leave me with the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 3. Now the absolute value is by itself, and now I can take it 2 ways, positive and negative. So I'm going to go over here and do x plus 2 equals 3 and x plus 2 equals negative 3 and solve. So subtract the 2, so x is 1. Subtract the 2, x is negative 5. You do want to still check your answers, okay? So let's check the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. What's the absolute value of 3? 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 minus 1 is 8, so that one's good. Check the negative 5. Negative 5 plus 2, negative 3. What's the absolute value of negative 3? Positive 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 minus 1 is 8, so they're both right. We'll do one more like this together, and then I'll let you try one, and we'll be done with this lesson. All right, so looking at this one, oh, maybe I want to do one more. Yeah, I want to do one more with you real quick, but it's a short one. All right, so absolute value symbols are there. They're just not very dark, so I'm making them a little darker. All right, first thing I would do is add my 2. So that's 1/3 times the absolute value of 3x minus 6 is equal to 7. And then how do I get rid of a 1/3? I multiply by the reciprocal. So 1 over 3 is 3 over 1, which is 3. So I'll multiply both sides by 3. So that'll give me the absolute value of 3x minus 6 equals 21. And then I'll take it my 2 ways now that my absolute value is by itself. So I'll do 3x minus 6 equals 21, and 3x minus 6 equals negative 21. All right, I'm about to see that. All right, so let's solve this one. So I'm going to add the 6. So 3x equals 27, divide by 3, and x is 9. Add 6, so 3x equals negative 15, divide by 3, and x is negative 5. And for time's sake, those are both right, okay? All right, this one. All right, so I'm gonna move it down. I don't know why that glares on there. I've tried to turn off the lights, but I don't know what's going on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and isolate my absolute value. So I'm gonna subtract the 12. So that's 2 times the absolute value of x minus 7 equals negative 8. Divide by 2. So that's the absolute value of x minus 7 equals negative 4. Did I just say the absolute value is equal to a negative number? No solution. After you isolate that absolute value, after I got it by itself and it was equal to a negative number, no solution. An absolute value will never be equal to a negative number. All right, try this one. Darken in my absolute values there for you. All right, pause me and go for it. All right, so you should have subtracted the 3 first. So that's 2 times the absolute value of x plus 9 equals 4. Divide by 2. So that's the absolute value of x plus 9 equals 2. After you isolate it, take it the 2 ways. So x plus 9 equals 2. X plus 9 equals negative 2. Subtract the 9. So x is negative 7. Subtract the 9. X is negative 11. And then you can check these. Negative 7 plus 9 is 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. Negative 11 plus 9 is negative 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. All right. Homework for tonight. Page 46, 10 through 18 even. So what is that? 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Only 5 problems. Wow. Adios.